Hello everyone. 안녕하세요. 네, 반갑습니다. 저는 오늘 첫 번째 워크샵 진행을 맡은 피스모머 평화 페미니즘 연구소의 아정이라고 합니다. 네, 오늘 이 자리는 중국, 일본, 캄보디아, 필리핀, 인도네시아, 동티모르, 태국의 청년 연구자들이 참여했고요. 그리고 2023년 여성인권과 평화 아시아청년포럼 이렇게 이름이 지어져 있습니다. 동아시아 평화를 위한 역사 NGO 포럼이 주최하고 한국여성인권진흥원, 일본군 위안부 문제연구소의 후원으로 온 오프로 하이브리드라고 하더라고요. 병행해서 열립니다. 영안 통역이 동시에 준비되어 있고요. 통역해 주시는 분들 위해서 박수 한번 치고 시작하면 좋겠습니다. 이번 그 기획은 사전 미팅과 세미나, 아까 그 양미경 선생님께서도 말씀을 해주셨는데요. 그 참여자들의 소통에 기반한 촘촘한 준비 과정이 아주 인상적이었다고 할 수 있겠습니다. 그만큼 오늘의 발표가 기대됩니다. 예, 그리고 취지문에도 나와 있듯이 이번 워크숍에서는 젠더화된 권력 체제의 로컬한 맥락, 그리고 로컬한 사례들을 청년의 시선에서 구체적으로 분석한다 하는 의미가 있는 것 같습니다. 예, 그래서 그 첫 번째 워크숍은 동북아 여성 인권과 평화, 일본군 위안부 문제를 중심으로 라는 주제로 문을 열어보도록 하겠습니다. 아까 잠깐 자료 화면도 보셨는데요. 자료집의 앞부분을 보시면 캐나다의 알파 에듀케이션의 플로라 총 대표님이 보내주신 축사가 실려 있습니다. 그리고 그 소개해 주신 바와 같이 시인 조이 코가와가 헌정한 그런 시를 인용하면서 반가운 예고를 해 주셨지요. 2024년 5월에 토론토에서 공식 개관하는 아시아 태평양 평화박물관 소식을 전해 주셨습니다. 첫 번째 시작은요. 캐나다 알파 에듀케이션의 에단 챙님이 일본군 위안부 여성들이 겪은 PTSD에 주목을 해서 제작한 영상물 A Nightmare That Follows 라는 영상을 함께 볼 겁니다. 13분 30초에 걸친 영상이고요. 그 이후에 발표 각 15분, 토론과 코멘트 각 5분으로 순서를 이어가도록 하겠습니다. 아무래도 이 영상물은 피해 사건 당시에만 국한되지 않는 피해를 당한 이후의 삶을 생각한다는 점에서, 그리고 전시 성폭력을 포함한 젠더 기반 폭력이 피해 생존자 여성들의 삶에 얼마나 지속적인 영향을 끼치고 있는가, 그리고 그러한 지속적인 영향 속에서도 살아내려고 하는 그녀들의 힘이 얼마나 강한가라는 것을 역설적으로 보여줄 거라고 생각을 합니다. 그러면 영상 부탁드리고 함께 보도록 하겠습니다.
In August 1945, the United States of America dropped 2 atomic bombs, one on the Japanese city of Hiroshima, the other on the city of Nagasaki. On September 2nd, Japanese Emperor Hirohito formally surrendered. In spite of this surrender, did Japan's wave of destruction that left 30 million people dead truly come to an end in September 1945? An examination of the mental health of survivors of Japanese military sexual slavery reveals that this was not to be.
정말 기가 막혀요. 그 어마어마한 군인들이 달라들고 강제로 달라들 적엔 정말 기가 막혀. 하도 입살을 깨물고 도망을 가려고 뿌리치고 도망을 나가다가 북제비서 끌어가면 당하면서도 어떻게 기가 막히고 가슴 아프고.
The Japanese military sexual slavery system enslaved 200,000 women from countries including but not limited to Korea, China, Philippines, Malaysia, Taiwan, Indonesia, and the Netherlands. The system lasted from the time of the invasion of Manchuria in 1931 to the end of the war in 1945. Many of these women were not women, but were adolescent girls. While in captivity, these women were raped by the Japanese sometimes as many as 30 to 40 times per day. Testimony by Chinese survivor Lin Yajin provides a glimpse into the brutality of life as a victim of Japanese military sexual slavery.
Normally 3 or 4 Japanese soldiers would come into my room together. I resisted fiercely when I had my menstrual period, but the Japanese soldiers raped me even when I was bleeding. I developed some kind of disease and had horrible pains when urinating. The lower part of my body became swollen and festered. If I showed the slightest resistance, they would grab my hair and hit my face and breasts. One day a Japanese soldier punched my left breast so hard that my chest continues to hurt today. My injured chest bones hurt, my private parts festered, I urinated blood, and my whole body was swollen and ached like hell. I thought I was going to die soon.
Sexually transmitted diseases such as syphilis and gonorrhea are a long-term physical consequence shared by many survivors. Disfigurement and disability is another common consequence among survivors. The brutal treatment of these women also resulted in catastrophic uterine damage for many. As such, many of these women were never able to have children. In addition to the physical consequences suffered by the survivors, they faced long-term social consequences. Many survivors were socially ostracized by their communities due to stigma surrounding rape. In order to avoid social ostracization, many women simply never returned home.
핑계도 안 했어 우리 집에 나와. 이게 좋은 아이 오래만이야 이런 알 같은 우리 얼마나 같이. 우리 딸도 손주들이 집에 없거든. 싫어한다 이런 말하는 거 싫어.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is among the most significant long-term consequences faced by survivors of Japanese military sexual slavery. Symptoms of PTSD typically consist of intrusive thoughts, avoidance, alterations in cognition and mood, and alterations in arousal and reactivity. Among studies of Filipino, Chinese, and Korean survivors, PTSD was found to be an extremely prominent, recurring affliction. Why is PTSD among survivors so severe? Why did the damage inflicted by the Japanese follow these women for so long? Rape is an experience that is particularly likely to cause PTSD compared to other traumatic incidents. The severity of rape as a particularly traumatic event persists in times of war. Women who experienced rape during World War II experienced greater PTSD symptoms than those who had not experienced rape. These observations can explain, in part, the high rates of PTSD among survivors of Japanese military sexual slavery.
How old were you when the Japanese took you?
I am 16 years old during that time. My name is Narcisa Claveria. Nung kinuha ako ng Japanese soldier, 13 years old. 1943, I am 14 years old.
Many of the victims of Japanese military sexual slavery were in their adolescence at the time that they were taken. Even those who were not adolescent girls were oftentimes young women. The life course perspective holds that the timing of an event can influence the severity of the consequence that a certain event has on one's life. those who experience early life trauma often experience severe mental consequences later in life. Considering the severity of the atrocities committed against these women and girls in captivity, the Life Course perspective predicts that this trauma would deeply scar these women for the rest of their lives. The use of avoidant coping mechanisms may also explain the prevalence of PTSD among survivors. As described by the American Psychiatric Association, avoidance includes any action that involves avoiding reminders of the traumatic event. Survivors would have lacked the appropriate resources to develop healthy coping mechanisms for their experiences. This is especially true in light of the social ostracization that they faced in their communities. As such, many of them resorted to avoidant methods to cope with their suffering. Avoidance has the potential to perpetuate PTSD symptoms through a number of mechanisms. Avoidance may reinforce the association between a given trigger and an individual's interpretation of a trigger as dangerous. Likewise, avoidance may also prevent individuals from learning to associate a trigger with a neutral, non-dangerous response. Josephina, one of 30 survivors studied by clinical psychologist Christine Lope-Il-Rizzello, sadly fell into this vicious cycle.
Josephina expressed a desire to get rid of sudden war flashbacks, which also affected her interaction with people. Her fear of strangers made it difficult to trust people. To prevent anxiety attacks, Josephina confined herself to her immediate family and a small circle of friends.
Rosello notes that this behavior stems from Josephina's fear of strangers, which stems from her sudden war flashbacks, a symptom consistent with PTSD. It is possible that Josephina's avoidance of strangers reinforced her association between strangers and memories of danger, not only preventing her from interacting with people, but perpetuating her PTSD symptoms.
The war is still going on. That was 1942. I was 14.
Your father never knew.
No, until they died. I told my mother to keep it ourselves because at that time it's really a dream. It's really a shame as a woman to be raped.
Will you ever tell your children?
Never. They will be ashamed of me, I know.
You know?
Yes.
The stigma that survivors faced after their escape or release was likely a significant factor in the prevalence of PTSD among survivors. The exact nature of the causal mechanism between social stigmatization and PTSD has yet to be fully understood. However, researchers have uncovered a clear relationship between the two. Possible explanations may be that social stigmatization leads to an increased sense that the victim has been permanently transformed by rape, a decreased sense of self-worth, and decreased opportunities for the victim to express themselves to others. Chinese survivor Yin Yulin described how she was unable to find a husband after the war. This was because it became widely known in her community that she had been raped by the Japanese. As such, no man in her community wanted to marry her. Yin also described symptoms consistent with PTSD, stating that she suffers from fear and nightmares in which she relives her experience in sexual slavery. Transgenerational trauma examines cases of the effects of trauma being transmitted to the offspring of those who originally experienced trauma. These cases underpin the notion that the damage inflicted by the Japanese not only extended far beyond the end of the war, but extended beyond their immediate victims as well. The daughter of a Korean survivor witnessed her father beat her mother as a result of her past as a victim of sexual slavery. This caused persistent feelings of unhappiness and led her to behave in a manner similar to her father in adulthood. The daughter also developed depression, anxiety, and insomnia. The son of a Korean survivor. His father treated his mother violently because of her past victimization. To cope with her circumstances, his mother resorted to alcohol. In adulthood, the son emulated his father's aggressive nature, nearly becoming a gang member. He also emulated his mother as he developed an alcohol addiction. Another son of a Korean survivor. Upon discovering his mother's past, he began to feel shame as a result of the stigmatization that survivors receive in society. The shame induced by stigma not only affects survivors, but extends to their children as well. These three tragic cases demonstrate that the damage inflicted by the Japanese extended far beyond their immediate victims. How can you ever heal from such brutality? How can you ever escape a nightmare that follows you home? How can anyone say there is justice when these nightmares become your children's? Did the war for these women ever truly end? Who will answer for these wounds?
네, 감사합니다. 여러분 어떻게 보셨을까요? 네, 아무래도 젠더 기반 폭력이나 전성 폭력을 비롯한 문제들을 영상화한 것들을 보게 될 때는 저희가 굉장한 그런 사안의 무거움에 압도당해버리는 것 같아요. 그런데 그 무거움에 압도당하지 않을 때 우리가 함께 볼 수 있는 가능성들도 있다고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 조금 무거움을 털어내고 그 다음 발표와 토론으로 이어가고 싶은데요. 보셨다시피 나중에 플로어 토론을 할 수 있으면 더욱 좋을 것 같은데요. PTSD로 말해질 수 있는 경험들이 있고, 그러나 PTSD를 겪는 경험을 한 이전에 그녀들의 삶은 어땠을까? 그러니까 그 이전의 삶들, 가부장제 사회 속에서 살아왔던 그 삶들은 완벽했을까? 여러 가지 생각을 하게 만드는 영상인 것 같습니다. 그래서 PTS 이전과 이후의 삶으로 매끄럽게 단절할 수 있는가? 그럼 우리는 어떤 완전한 삶을 생각하면서 이것들을 보아야 하는가? 이런 좀 복잡한 생각이 듭니다. 그러나 증언해 주실 분들이 한 분도 생존해 있지 않을 가까운 미래를 생각할 때 살아남은 자들이, 그리고 이 시대를 살아내는 사람들이 이제까지 들려준 증언들을 어떻게 나의 문제로 이어가고 어떻게 듣기를 계속할 수 있을까? 어떻게 우리에게 들려준 이야기들을 계속 우리의 과제로 떠안고 해나갈 수 있을까? 청중의 역량이 더욱 중요해지는 시기인 것 같습니다. 그러면 첫 번째 발표로 넘어가도록 하겠습니다. 영상에 대한 의견은 나중에 플로어 토론 시간 때 개진해 주시면 좋을 것 같아요. 첫 번째 발표는 경상국립대학교 사회과학연구원의 송혜리 선생님입니다. 남해 평화의 소녀상과 수기 나래 문화재라는 주제로 발표를 해 주실 텐데요. 아무래도 소녀상 문제는 재현, 운동, 담론의 차원에서 항상 언급이 되어 왔고, 그리고 툭하면 정치화되기 십상이었던 그런 문제이기도 합니다. 그래서 저희가 함께 송혜리 선생님의 발표에 귀를 기울이면서 고민을 좀 해봤으면, 소녀상에 대한 고민을 조금 더 밀어붙여 보았으면 좋겠습니다. 잘 부탁드립니다, 선생님.
Hello, my name is Harry Song, and I am research fellow at the Social Healing Center at Gyeongsang National University. The topic of my presentation is the Namhae Statue of Peace and Sukinare Cultural Festival. And now I'm a little bit nervous, but I'll do my best. The contents is as follows. First, the research background and problem statement. For the present, explain the core of this study. It revolves around the building process of Statue of Peace and the creation of memory culture related to Statue of Peace as a form of public history. Statue of Peace was built to remember the history of the Japanese military comfort women issue and to push for an official apology and representations by making the issue impossible to ignore. Two issues can be raised here. The first issue is the building process of Statue of Peace, which became the centerpiece of the Japanese military comfort women's movement, and who built it. There has been little discussion on the process of how Statue of Peace came to be and how the issue of Japanese military comfort women is remembered through the Statue of Peace. The second issue is the public history of the Statue of Peace at the local level. In Korea, there has been little research on how local people remember these Japanese military comfort women through the Statue of Peace that have been built in local. I would like to examine how collective memory and memory culture are being created after the building of Statue of Peace at the local level, especially through the case of the Namhae of Gyeongnam Province. And here's a review of peer research and theoretical discussions. Korean research on Japanese military comfort women can be broadly divided into two categories: research on Japanese military comfort women and the Statue of Peace. Among them, studies on Statue of Peace can be further divided into two categories. Among Statue of Peace in Seoul and Statue of Peace in local, I pay attention to local. Statue of Peace in local studies actively introduce the Gyeongnam Province and talk about its connections with social movements and civil society organizations. Based on this, we can conclude that these studies continue to raise awareness of the nature of the Japanese military comfort women issue, while also creating mechanisms to resist the Japanese government stance through a human rights-based perspective. However, it is a major gap in the literature that the Japanese military comfort women resistance movement was activated at the local level, but the discussions is still centered on the national level. In addition, there is a lack of research on how the Statue of Peace was built, who built it, and how it is shaping the memory culture of history. Therefore, I intend to conduct a case analysis of Namhae Statue of Peace based on the cultural memory theories of Jean Assmann and Allied Assmann. At the core of cultural memory is the idea that memory is culturally reconstructed, serves the function of cultural symbols, and forms the basis of cultural practices. There are points in the case of Namhae that align with these principles. And based on this, I have selected the following four central keywords for my case study, which I believe I will interact with the following case analysis of the Namhae Statue of Peace and the Suginare Cultural Festival. To investigate Namhe Statue Office and Suginare Cultural Festival, the study adapted to qualitative case study. As a part of research process, fieldwork was conducted in Namhe from 2019 to 2023, and in-depth interviews were conducted with key figures involved in creating cultural memories, including Suginare Cultural Festival. This time, I will analyze the core contents, Namhe Statue Office, and Suginare Cultural Festival. Let's talk a little bit about Statue Office in Korea. This is a map of the Statue Office in Korea, and everywhere you see a yellow butterfly is a region with a Statue Office. As 2019, there are 129 Statue Office in Korea, and about 18 of them are located in local areas. In that case, it is necessary to examine the characteristics of Statue Office created in local. The photo depicts the Statue Office built in my hometown, Jinju, to honor Kang Deok-kyung, a victim from Jinju. Most of Statue Office created in local exhibit the characteristics of an interactive construction process involving citizens, such as citizen participations in fundraising. Furthermore, victim support organizations play a central role in the construction of Statue Office, following the form known as building from below. As a result, considering that public history refers to historical activities and practices performed in various public lives of society, it can be related to this concept as the Statue of Peace are a part of public history. But not all Statue of Peace monuments were built from the below by citizens. There are also built from above by local governments without considering citizen involvement. What's interesting to note is that the way memories of the Statue of Peace and the Japanese military comfort women were developed differs depending on builders and the building process. Unlike built from below, building from above without citizen involvement failed to play a role in spreading memory culture and experience reification of memory. This is the case in Namhe. The issues with building from above can be summarized into three main problems. The picture you are looking at is the Namhe Suk-i Park, named after the Namhe Statue Office and Park Suk-i, a victim of Japanese military's comfort women from Namhe. However, even though the park seems to be well organized at first glance, but it exhibits the three problems mentioned above. The reason I focused on the case of Namhe is precisely because of these issues. Namhe Statue Office was the first of its kind of South Korea to be built from above, making it the first place to experience the reification of memory. Additionally, Gyeongnam, where Namhe is located, had the highest number of victims of Japanese military comfort women in Korea. Considering these factors, I think that the movements, concerns, and efforts of local activities to address these issues could be expressed as a counter-memory culture. The culture of resistance is embodied in the Suginare Cultural Festival, which means Park Suk-i, a victim from Namhe, flies away as a butterfly. Its culture It is a cultural festival organized by citizens to create a culture of resistance, memory that transcends the limitations of verifications of memory while honoring the victims. The festival is a collaborative effort between citizen organizations that supported Park Suk-lee and youth at Namhae and the arts community, and it is an event in which all local resistance participate. The picture currently looking at this from the 7th Suginare Cultural Festival, which took place in August in this year. It consists of activities such as the screening of movies related to the Japanese military comfort women issue, and commemorative performance by youth. In this way, Suginare Cultural Festival, which is created and led by citizens to counteract building process from above, is characterized by its significant aspect in terms of human rights and peace, the landscape of memory, and the encouragement of voluntary participations. The significance of the Suginare Cultural Festival is as follows. First, Suginare Cultural Festival plays a bringing role in transforming fragmented individual memories into communicative collective memories regarding the issue of the Japanese military's comfort women due to the limitations of building process from above. It fosters a sense of collective consistencies and solidarity among participants, facilitating the transition towards cultural memory. Second, participants who develop a shared awareness of the issue of the Japanese military's comfort women through the Suginare Cultural Festival can possess socially agreed upon memories that can be continuously reacted and transmitted through various cultural practices. Finally, significance and limitation of this study. The significance of this study can be summarized in two aspects. Firstly, through the case of Namhae, it has demonstrated the commemorative memory culture in the form of cultural festivals. They naturally incorporates the issue of the Japanese military comfort women into the collective subconscious, thereby shaping normative values. And secondly, it has shed light on the formation of citizen-driven resistant memory culture through the stage of peace, fostering solidarity that transcends generations, locals, and gender. However, it's important to note that there are limitations as well. Following the impact of pandemic, face-to-face solidarity processes have weakness, and replication of memory have been observed even in cases of building processes from above. This research does not sufficiently explain this aspect. If further research is conducted, I believe it's an area that should be explored in greater depth. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
네, 선생님 감사합니다. 정말 이렇게 소중한 이야기들 많이 들려주셨고, 남해 사례는 저도 잘 알지 못하고 있던 부분이었는데요. 이렇게 구체적인 사례를 가지고 설명을 해주시니까 굉장히 도움이 되었던 것 같습니다. 기억에 남았던 건 이제 문화적 기억, 그리고 축제라는 형태로서의 저항 문화, 이런 것들이 좀 인상적이었는데요. 나중에 다른 선생님들의 코멘트를 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 다음은 난징대학교의 유네스코 평화대학원 대팅 류 선생님이신데요. 역사적 트라우마 문제 다루기, 난징의 사례로 라는 주제로 발표해 주시겠는데 현장에는 안 계시지만 지금 줌으로 연결이 되어 있다고 들었습니다. 그래서 네, 연결되었을까요? 예, 선생님 반갑습니다. 네, 반갑습니다. 그리고 오늘 보았던 영상이 트라우마와 관련된 것이었기 때문에 또 선생님 조금 더 섬세하게 짚어주실 거라고 생각이 됩니다. 그러면 발표 부탁드리겠습니다.
Hello everyone, this is Ding. I'm joining from China, and I will start share am I sharing? Sorry, I'm sharing screen. This. So today I will be discussing the subject of healing grassroots relationships from the perspective of historical trauma, with a particular focus on the city of Nanjing, as you can see the title of my presentation. By the way, I just want to share that this colorful font that I'm using was created by my friends, General Frank Korea, and its design is a tribute to the sexual minorities and other marginalized communities. Because today we are discussing the wartime survivors, particularly the grandmas who undoubtedly belongs to this group of people. So I'm using this font as a way to pay my respect to them. So I will share the link to download this font in the chat later, so please feel free to use it if you are interested. And back to my presentation today, I'm going to introduce three sections that the impact of historic trauma of the Nanjing massacre on both societies, Japanese and Chinese, and then a case analysis about this program, Remembering Nanjing. And this is the new endeavor that I created, Revisiting Nanjing. To start with, because as this, the key points of this presentation is that in order to foster authentic relationships and cooperations between two peoples who had been in violent conflicts, it is crucial to address the enduring historical trauma that stands as a significant barriers in between. So in the context of China-Japan relations, the Nanjing massacre stands out as one highly controversial event. So here's a very brief overview of why Nanjing has become such a contentious focal point. Basically, starting in 1982, the denial of the Nanjing massacre and the nationalistic education within Japanese society and the frequent Yasukuni worship in Japan has somehow activated defensive reactions within Chinese societies. So back in China, starting in the 1980s, the patriotic education basically on the Sino-Japanese War and focusing on the description of the Nanjing massacre, and also the following up events such as the research on the Nanjing massacre and the memorial halls. All this together makes Nanjing become the icon of Chinese national trauma. And because of this, so this historical trauma seriously impacted both societies, the Japanese society and Chinese societies. Starting with the Chinese societies, for example, the Nanjing survivors. As the first video has introduced, the PTSD symptoms that a lot of wartime survivors are still facing now. This also includes the Nanjing survivors, including those grandmas as well. And from that, the Nanjing citizens, they also endure a lot of, the historical symptoms, like through the family school educations and also the Nanjing Memorial Museum, and also a lot of monuments are in the city as reminders of this traumatic history. So beyond that, about the general Chinese public, we have this patriotic education on this a specific wartime period, and also through the media. So this historical wounds was so very much closely intertwined with the national sentiment, and a lot of people are still believing that we are holding this strong collective identity as a wartime victim. And for the Japanese society, so we have this Japanese war veterans. The psychologist in Japan, Muramoto, she defined this term as perpetration trauma to describe the Japanese veterans. So they were also suffering from the wartime perpetrations, as like having a lot of nightmares, and also the form of suppressing their trauma, as I guess it's also mentioned in the video that it can be developed into the form of domestic violence and social violence that is still infecting those who are not actually experiencing the war. And so this is about the descendants of the Japanese veterans. And also for the general Japanese public,
네, 여러분 잠깐 그 인터넷 상태가 좋지 않아서 예, 선생님께서 잠깐 나가신 것 같아요. 자, 들어오실 때까지 조금 예, 기다려 볼까요? 기다리면서 어떤 얘기를 나누면 좋을까 싶은데요. 지금 제가 너무 집중해서 듣고 있었는데 그럴지 모르겠어요. 예, 80년대 중국의 애국교육 얘기를 해주셨고, 또 난징기념관이 때맞춰서 개관을 하면서 역사적 국가적 트라우마라는 것이 생성이 되었다. 근데 저는 궁금하네요. 이렇게 역사적 트라우마나 국가적 트라우마로 분류해서 말씀하시는 것도 궁금하고요. 또 이를 통해서 피해자로서의 집단적 무의식이라는 것이 중국에서 형성이 되었다. 이런 부분도 예, 되게 흥미로웠습니다. 다시 들어오셨을까요? 네, 예. 기다리고 있었습니다. 예. We are waiting for you.
Sorry, I guess I dropped off.
Okay.
I'll continue a presentation, sorry. So for the general Japanese public, the very typical symptom is like a lot of Japanese people, they are very reluctant to talk about the history. And this could be one of the trauma symptoms, as it was discussed by Muramoto as well. And so like to summarize the impact of trauma, including the historical trauma, like the video at the very beginning has showed trauma impacted individuals in a very deeper, profound manner. So like a lot of survivors, they were having these nightmares and dysfunctions in behaviors and speeches. And also because of this traumatized self, they can also create this separation within the relationships. Like the trauma can break relationships. For example, the relationships within family members, as well as the relationships between different communities, like between the Chinese and Japanese, or between the Koreans and Japanese as well. And here I want to address why trauma is so important from the perspective of peace and conflict studies. So I revisited the Galton's ABC triangle and made a connection between the trauma and conflict. I placed the unhealed trauma as the contradiction at the root causes of conflicts. And so it can manifest in attitudes such as resentment and angers and hostility towards the conflicting parties, and also could be manifested in behaviors, including the verbal or physical attacks towards the conflicting parties. So in other words, conflict can also be perceived as a manifestation of trauma, providing this opportunity for us to recognize the invisible wound that is still carried by us. And so if conflict remains unresolved or mismanaged, it can escalate into violence here, becoming a source of new trauma or re-traumatization. So this is the well-known, the vicious circle of violence. And also, but when conflict is constructively reconciled, it could open the pathway to peace, which means, we need to address trauma and then to heal the relationships. Also from the historical perspective, this is coming from a historian who has been working on the issues of reconciliation. He also illustrated that to achieve reconciliation, it is really important to address the emotional aspects, the hearts of the people, especially those rooted in historical trauma. So therefore, I started looking for grassroots initiatives and promoting the grassroots relationships through addressing historical trauma in a profound manner. And I came across this program called Remembering Nanjing. This is a very general overview of the program. So while we don't have time to dive into the details, feel free to look through the slide if you are interested in the details. Basically, this is a program that is using the arts-based therapeutic techniques to address the historical trauma of Nanjing between post-war generations of Chinese and Japanese. And the findings is like the program do use the trauma-informed approach. For example, it created a new historical narratives, including a lot of personal stories that is related to the historical events. And it also adopted arts-based therapeutic activities, which minimized the likelihood of re-traumatization while walking through the traumatic historical events. But it also has a lot of limitations, like reinforced the victim-perpetrator dichotomy, and overemphasized the apology as a goal, not as the process, and suppressed the grieving process of the perpetrators as well. And so based on these findings, I created this program called Revisiting Nanjing, and this is the theoretical foundation and the practical foundation, and including my personal experiences in the past few years. And for the overview of the endeavor, it's also about healing the relationships between the post-war generations of Chinese and Japanese. We could interpret that as young generations of between two peoples. And the objectives of the endeavor is to raising the trauma awareness through the connecting the personal stories with the historical events or historical trauma. And then to providing a supportive space for intra-healing. Intra-healing means to healing within the individuals, and inter-healing means healing within the relationships. And then deepening the relationships between the two societies, in this context, Japanese and Chinese. And how does this program carry out is used a trauma-informed healing-centered approach together with three methods. The educational methods for the cultivating new historical narratives, and the arts-based therapeutic methods for raising trauma awareness, and somatic methods for nurturing trauma healing. And so in details, is the educational one is like we could use lecture-based learning and participant learning together to cultivate a comprehensive understanding of our past historical events, especially the traumatic ones. And the arts-based therapeutic include 4 pieces. First is about relationship building through playfulness, like activities. And then the raising trauma awareness through personal narratives by playing like a lot of fun activities, or using techniques like social circles as well. And then is transcending the victim-perpetrator dichotomy through grieving together. And the fourth is the foster piece out of healing within. That is basically the concept addresses the importance of trauma healing while pursuing peace. And the somatic methods include simple meditative processes like nurturing trauma healing. And another is a advanced meditative practice, which aims to end perpetration within every one of us. And beyond the workshops, we could also have a lot of casual introductions and experiential learnings during the field trip. And this is the limitations. It's like trauma healing basically requires a lot of time, patience, and inside-out work. So it may not be appreciated by today's pastor society. And it's very difficult to find those highly qualified facilitators as well. And I guess this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
네, 발표 감사합니다. 아무래도 앞서 본 영상과 관련해서 마지막으로 언급해 주신 그런 프로세스로서의 트라우마 치유라는 그런 말씀이 인상에 남네요. 그리고 아까 그 참전했던 그런 군인들, 일본의 군인들이 가정폭력의 가해자로서 다시 또 다른 피해자를 양상하는 그런 말씀을 전해주셨는데 한국에도 베트남 전쟁 참전 군인들 인터뷰한 자료들을 보면 마찬가지 현상이 나옵니다. 예, 그 가정을 끝까지 꾸리지 못하시거나 아니면 이혼을 하시거나 아니면 가정폭력을 가정폭력 피해자를 양산하는 방식으로 그런 트라우마라는 것이 드러나는 그래서 이른바 전장을 안방으로 끌어들였다. 라는 표현들이 있습니다. 그래서 전쟁과 전혀 관련 없는 피해자라고 하기에는 어려울 것 같다는 생각이 또 들기도 합니다. 그럼 마지막 발표인데요. 여러분 오래 기다리셨죠? 예, 마지막 발표를 듣고 또 각 코멘트를 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 마지막 발표는 일본 내에서 일본군 위안부 문제 현황과 쟁점이라는 주제로 히토츠바시 대학원의 구마노 코에 선생님께서 발표를 해 주겠습니다. 사실 일본 내 일본군 위안부 문제는 하루도 조용할 날이 없지요. 그리고 때가 되면 때마다 계속해서 뭐 역사 수정주의라던가 아니면 또 몇 년 전에 새롭게 등장한 램제어라던가 이런 사람들이 등장을 하면서 굉장히 아직도 문제화되고 있는 부분이 있지요. 그래서 오늘 그 쿠마노 코에 선생님이 여러 가지로 현황과 쟁점에 대해서 짚어주시겠습니다. 예, 부탁드리겠습니다.
I'm going to share my screen. Can you see the screen? Okay, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Koei Kumano. I'm from the Hitotsubashi University Graduate School of Social Sciences, but I'm studying the modern and contemporary history of Korea, especially the sex trafficking issue in colonial Korea. But today I'm going to talk about the current situation and issues of the Japanese military conflict women issue in Japan. Okay, so first, I'm going to share the basic information about the history of the Japanese military conflict women issue so that everyone can be on the same page. And after that, I'm going to introduce the current situation of this issue and current grassroots actions for the solution of the Japanese military conflict women issue in Japan. The history of the Japanese military conflict women issue in Japan. So this issue rose in 1991 with accusation by Kim Hak-sun, as everyone knows, who is the conflict women survivor from Korea. But after that, the Japanese government started to show their the attitude of remorse through statements. And there are some statements, but the famous ones are Kono statements in 1993 and Murayama statement in 1995. But these statements, of course, had their limitations. And for example, they didn't acknowledge that the Japanese military was the subject of the Japanese military's conflict women system. And also they didn't pay any compensation and they didn't take any legal responsibility. But on the other hand, since 1997, the school education about the conflict women issue started in Japan because the description of the Japanese military conflict women system got included in junior high school history textbooks then. But at the same time, a lot of right-wing groups, such as Skurukai or Japan Conference, which is Nihon Kaigi in Japanese, Nihon Kaigi is the largest right-wing groups in Japan, but these kind of right-wing groups established in 1997, and this is the rise of the historical denialism. And after that, a lot of politicians started to deny the historical fact of the Japanese media comfort women issue, including Shinzo Abe. And also in 2006, the descriptions of comfort women issue was deleted from the history textbooks. And in 2015, Japan reached kind of agreement with Korea about this issue. And they provide the 1 billion yen from the Japanese government to Korean Foundation, and they confirm that this issue is resolved finally and irreversibly with this announcement. So actually, a lot of Japanese people kind of believe that the Japanese media comfort women issue is already over with this agreement, but of course it's not true, because the Japanese government again didn't pay any compensation through this agreement, and also they didn't take any legal responsibility. And the important point is that they ignored the will of the Japanese media comfort women survivors, because those survivors couldn't join the process of this agreement. So that's why the United Nations also pointed out this issue. And also this agreement is just formed between Korea and Japan, but there are so many other victims from other countries such as China or Philippines or Malaysia, Indonesia, and so on. So basically this agreement kind of ignored those kind of victims as well. So here's the current situation. So as I said before, the historical denialism spread in Japan, but this problem is not only in Japan, but also in Korea. And the Korean the historical denialism is called the New Right Movement. This movement is kind of counter movement against the past liquidation project under the Nonghyun administration in the 2000s. And this project through this project, the Korean government researched a lot of historical facts, and the collaborators who collaborate with the Japanese imperialism in the colonial Korea were kind of condemned, and also they are kind of have connected with they have connected with the right-wing groups, of course. So that's why a lot of the current right-wing people are also kind of react to this project, and they kind of condemn the people who fight for the victims or supporters as communist. So basically the New Right Movement in Korea has kind of anti-communism ideologies, and also they kind of justify the Japanese colonial rule. And they attack the Wednesday demonstration, which is a demonstration calling for the true solution of the Japanese media comfort women issue. And also they this New Right Movement have a solidarity with Japanese right-wing groups. And another new movement in Korea is that Korea had the new president last year, and his name is Yoon Suk-yeol, as everyone knows. And he's actually he mentioned that I can't accept the idea that Japan must kneel down for what happened 100 years ago in his interview of this year. So basically, he is kind of ignoring the human rights of the victims, and he prioritized the safety assurance among Japan, Korea, and the United States over historical justice. And this kind of attitude is called future-oriented relations. And this attitude is based on the 1965 regime, which is what I'm going to explain in next slides. Okay. So why has not the Japanese media comfort women issue been solved yet? So there are so many reasons for that, but I'm going to explain 3 reasons. The first one is political reasons. So the 1965 regime is very, very related to this one. So what is 1965 regime? So this regime was built by the Japan-Korea Claims Agreement in 1965. And basically this regime is that Japan and the United States and South Korean pseudo-triangular military alliance system, suppressing the eruption of historical issues. So I think it's kind of complicated, so I made images of this regime. So Japan and Korea, each countries have formed the military alliance with the United States, and in order to maintain this military alliance system, they suppress the voice from the victims or like a supporting group of the Japanese military conflict women issue or other historical issues between Japan and Korea. And this, of course, this military alliance system is always against the China or Russia or the DPRK, but they try to when they try to maintain this triangular military alliance system, they always kind of suppressed and oppressed the voice from the victims. And when it comes to the Japanese situation, the right-wing groups still have large power in the Japanese politics. And our current prime minister, the prime minister is called Kishida, and his cabinet has a deep relationship with right-wing groups. And for example, like 90% of members of the cabinet are members of right-wing groups. So this is a political reasons. So second one is educational reasons. So as I said before, since 2006, the description about the Japanese military conflict women issue was deleted from the history textbook in Japan. So basically, we don't have almost no school education about the Japanese military conflict women issue. But actually, like some teachers, history teachers, are trying to teach this issue in their class. And one of them is the Mitsuko Hirai, who is a junior high school history teacher in Osaka. But she's she's teaching the history of the Japanese military conflict women issue in her history class. But she got a lot of attack by right-wing groups or some like politicians. So basically, it is very hard to teach the Japanese military conflict women issue in Japan, especially in public school. So third one is cultural reasons. And obviously, the Japanese people have lack of awareness of colonial and war responsibility. Well, of course, this is related to the Japanese school system as well, the school education, as I said before. But at the same time, most Japanese people have low awareness of human rights, especially the women's human rights. And this tendency is always like connected to deep-rooted sexism culture, especially sex trafficking or like sex exploitation. And in fact, we have a lot of cases of molestation, which is called chikan in Japanese. And also we have the Japanese porno, and we have a huge sex industry. And I put the photo of the Kabukicho, which is the largest red light district in Tokyo. And actually, this place is kind of one of the most famous and popular sightseeing spots. So if you go there, you find a lot of foreign visitors there, but at the same time, you can see a lot of girls standing on the road and selling their sex. Well, of course, the problem is not it's not their fault, but the problem is the man who buy their sex. And most of the girls standing on the road are in the poverty, and some of them are kind of abused by their parents, or like they don't have safe space in their homes. So that's why they just have to go out, but they don't have money, so they just have to sell their sex. And this kind of like sex trafficking issue is really significant issue right now in Japan. And of course, like sex trafficking or like sex exploitation is kind of different from the Japanese military conflict women issue, but both of them are kind of same when it comes to the fact that both of them are sexual exploitation. And there was and still is the continuing perception that it is acceptable to sexually exploit women. And those kind of like sexism cultures in Japan makes Japanese people aware of how the Japanese military conflict women system was violent. So I think this sexism culture is really significant issue. And these kind of political reasons, educational reasons, and cultural reasons are always like complement each other. And these reasons always makes it hard to solve the Japanese military conflict women issue in Japan. So lastly, I'm going to explain the current grassroots actions for the solution of the Japanese military conflict women issue. So the first one is publication of an introductory book. Actually, this publication of the introductory book project, I'm involved in this project. But we published the book called Student Tales from Inside Japan and Korea Haze. We published this book 2 years ago, and this book is basically an introductory book about the historical issues between Japan and Korea, including the Japanese military comfort women issue or like some other colonial rule issue. And we explain those kind of issues from the perspective of human rights, because most Japanese people believe that these historical issues is kind of just a political or like diplomatic issues, not as the human rights issue. So we pointed out these issues are human rights issue. And we also include a lot of essays which show how we started to face the history of the Japanese invasion and colonization of Korea as a student. And we try to show that like the process, how we started to learn this issue, so that like every reader can easily try to understand to the process through the essays. And this book is being sold 10,000 copies in Japan. And next one is the website project called Fight for Justice. And this website provides the information about the Japanese military comfort women issue, of course, free of charge. And this website provides information in several languages: Japanese, English, Korean, and Chinese, so that most people around the world can access to the website. And as I said before, in Japan, we have almost no school education about the Japanese military comfort women issue. So I hope this website will be kind of good place for the Japanese people, Japanese citizens, to learn about this issue as well. And we also create educational videos and provide online lectures in this project. And third one is solidarity with anti-sex trafficking exploitation movement. So as I said before, in Japan now, the sex trafficking issue is really a significant issue. But at the same time, we have kind of movement of the anti-sex trafficking, but those movement had got a fierce attack by a lot of people right now, especially on the internet. And so that's why like a lot of researchers of the Japanese military comfort women issue show the solidarity with this movement, and especially they show the solidarity with Collabo, which is the one of the groups of the supporting the girls roaming around the night cities. And this group provides those girls with free food, clothes, medicine, and so on. And the researchers also introduced some anti-sex trafficking movements in South Korea, because South Korea also has kind of same issue of the sex trafficking. But at the same time, they have more the anti-sex trafficking movement. So that's why a lot of some researchers are kind of introducing the movement of Korea to Japanese society right now. So here's the conclusion. So the historical denialism spread not only in Japan, but also in Korea. And the reason why the Japanese military comfort women issue has not been solved yet is there are so many reasons. But from my point of view, the 1965 regime is the most fundamental reasons. But at the same time, there are so many other reasons, like such as the school education issue or the Japanese people's awareness, the lack of awareness of human rights or like sexism culture. And we have in order to overcome this issue, we have the movement, the current grassroots movement, such as like publication of book or website project called Fight for Justice. And some researchers and some citizens are showing the solidarity with the anti-sex trafficking movement to overcome the sexism culture in Japan. So here's a reference, and thank you for listening.
네, 마지막 발표까지 들어보았습니다. 예. 오늘 그 마지막 발표자 구마노 코헤이 선생님께서 소개해 주셨던 웹사이트는 정의를 위한 투쟁 Fight for Justice라고 알고 있는데요. 예, 한번 여러분들께서도 들어가 보시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 그리고 일본군 위안부 문제의 개요, 그리고 역사 문제 전반에 대해서 어떤 도입의 층위에서 만들어 주셨던 책도, 여러 선생님들이 써주셨던 책도 한번 들여다보고 싶네요. 저도 아직 알고 있지 못한 책이어서요. 예, 감사합니다. 굉장히 논쟁적인 이야기들도 있을 것 같은데요. 일단은 세 분의 코멘트, 토론자 선생님분들이 기다리고 계십니다. 예, 일단 그 코멘트를 연속해서 다 들어본 이후에 종합 토론의 형태로 조금 더 이야기 나눠볼 수 있었으면 좋겠습니다. 예, 먼저 첫 번째 코멘테이터는요, 경상국립대학교 김명희 선생님 나와 계십니다. 예, 온라인으로 연결되어 있는데요. 예, 선생님 부탁드립니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 목소리 잘 들리시나요?
네.
네, 그 뜻깊은 자리에서 만나 뵙게 된 것을 기쁘게 생각합니다. 그리고 귀한 토론의 자리를 마련해 주신 그 역사 연수 프로그램의 병미강 대표님과 강성래 대표님, 그리고 각국의 여러 참여자 여러분께 감사드립니다. 제가 맡은 부분은 송혜리 연구원에 대한 코멘트인데요. 그 다른 선생님들의 발표 굉장히 흥미로웠습니다. 일단 그 송혜리 연구원의 발표에 대해서 이제 코멘트를 먼저 하겠습니다. 이 연구의 주요 결과에 동의를 하고 연구자의 노고에 큰 박수를 보냅니다. 알다시피 오늘날 일본군 위안부 문제를 둘러싼 역사 전쟁은 평화의 소묘상 건립과 철거를 둘러싸고 치열하게 전개되고 있습니다. 이 역사 전쟁의 주요한 싸움터는 우리의 집단적 기억입니다. 동시에 지역이라고 하는 구체적인 장소이기도 합니다. 이러한 배경 속에서 이 연구는 일본군 위안부의 역사성을 부정하는 역사 부인론의 부상에 맞서서 지역 수준에서 전개된 기림운동의 의미와 그 가능성을 새롭게 조명하고 있다는 점에서 대단히 소중합니다. 특히 이 연구는 남해 지역의 기억운동을 문화적 기억과 지역 공공역사의 관점에서 살펴보고 있습니다. 대부분의 연구 결과에 동의를 보내지만 몇 가지 코멘트를 통해 이 연구가 더 좋은 연구가 되기를 바라면서 말씀을 드립니다. 이제 첫 번째로는 그 남해의 평화의 소녀상과 수기날의 문화재를 이끌었던 핵심 주체들의 서사가 보다 좀 구체적으로 그리고 인권의 관점에서 강조될 필요가 있는 것 같습니다. 지금은 남해 기업운동의 주요 주체가 지자체와 지방자치단체와 시민사회 그리고 청소년들이라고 하는 다소 단순화된 측면에서 서술되고 있습니다. 또는 위로부터의 소녀상의 건립과정 그리고 아래로부터의 소녀상의 건립과정 이렇게 좀 단순화된 측면이 있습니다. 물론 남해 평화의 소녀상 자체는 위로부터 관이 주도로 건립된 것은 맞습니다. 하지만 보다 넓은 맥락에서 보자면 이 기획 자체가 오래전부터 피해자와 연대했던 경남 지역의 일본군 성노의 피해자 지원 운동과 연대 운동과 의 어떤 노력들의 결실이었다는 점을 좀 더 강조할 필요가 있는 것 같습니다. 수목의 건립 자체가 경남 지역의 일본군 위안부 운동이 주도했던 피해자 지원 조례 제정의 성과이기도 하고요. 이렇게 볼 때 남해의 사례는 지원운동과 연대하여 피해 생존자들의 인권이 확장되어 온 메커니즘을 잘 보여줍니다. 구체적인 일본군 성노예 피해자를 기억하기 위한 이러한 실천들은 진실을 알 권리를 확장하면서 인권과 평화라고 하는 가치를 지역사회에 기입해온 과정을 잘 보여줍니다. 이것을 강조하는 것이 중요한 이유는요. 일본군 위안부 문제에 대한 이슈에 대한 역사 부인이 최근에 피해자의 존재를 부정하는 것만이 아니라 피해자의 지지자들, 즉 지원 활동가들을 부정하기 때문에 더 중요하다는 생각을 합니다. 두 번째로는 일본군 위안부 문제 공론화에 기여한 성노예 피해자와 활동가들 사이의 연대는 풀뿌리 운동과 지역적 실천이 왜 중요한지를 일러줍니다. 종종 간과되는 사실이지만 지역 공동체는 인권 보장 체제 구축에서 매우 핵심적인 역할을 합니다. 왜냐하면 지역 공동체는 인권 침해를 가까이서 구체적으로 파악하고 그 피해를 최소화하기 위한 조치를 효과적으로 구축할 수 있는 현장이기 때문입니다. 실제로 지역에 기반한 돌봄과 연대의 실천들은 일본군 성노예 생존자들의 피해 회복을 지원하고 인권 운동가로서 거듭남을 촉진하는 데 핵심적인 역할을 했습니다. 이 점에서 남해의 사례는 지역 공동체에 기반한 이행기 정의, 실천의 가능성을 제시하는 사례라고 할 수 있습니다. 이상의 점을 강조한다면 남해의 공공역사 운동이 지닌 역동성과 실천성이 훨씬 더 풍부하게 드러나지 않을까 생각합니다. 감사합니다.
네, 김명현 선생님 고맙습니다. 예, 여러 가지 코멘트를 주셨는데요. 지역에 기반한 연대와 돌봄이라는 층에서 말씀해 주신 것이 너무 소중하다는 생각이 들고, 그래서 지역 공동체에 기반한 이행기 정의로서의 그런 위안부 피해자 지원, 활동, 그리고 활동가들, 예, 이런 말씀 해주신 것이 너무 좋았습니다. 예, 감사드리고요. 여러분께 조금 알려드릴 일이 있는데, 그 다음 이제 코멘트를 해주셔야 되는 선생님께서, 예, 네, 중국의 바이슈앙 선생님이신데요. 난징 사범대학교 선생님이신데 부득이한 사정으로 지금 줌과 연결되지 못하고 계세요. 그래서 메시지를 보내오셨는데요. 알비님께서 대신 대독해 주시기로 하셨습니다. 네, 부탁드릴게요.
So we are very sorry to inform you that one of our mentors couldn't be able to join the session due to technical issues. But she sent her feedback and her thoughts on the following procedure. So I'd like to quote Deting Lu. Her research provides a new perspective on how China and Japan remember the healing with the historical trauma. Gave us a very good and detailed examples of each part's efforts. I would like to make 2 points. First, historical truth and dialogue are very important for us to achieve reconciliation. Only by respecting history, we can truly learn from history and better promote our friendship and trust between us. In addition, to those mentioned in the study, we have held a number of Sino-Japanese peace dialogue meetings, but mainly for Chinese and Japanese. Even if we are on the same sides, or different sides rather, the war has caused us great harm. Cherishing peace is our common goal, but only through reconciliations and trust we can truly move away from war. Secondly, I found that the current activities are mainly in the form of education and academics. As the victims of the war continue to pass away, whether we can find other ways to promote the healing of traumatic history in future generations still requires our joint efforts. The comfort women issue is also a matter of structural violence. It is also a question worth thinking about. End of quote. By Professor Deting Lu. Thank you.
네, 고맙습니다. 예, 대독해 주셔서 감사드리고요. 예, 청중분들께도 죄송하다는 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 예, 지금 글을 통해서 메시지를 전해 오셨는데요. 아무래도 일본군 위안부 문제를 비롯한 난징 대학살도 마찬가지인데 학계와 교육 분야에 국한되지 않는 그런 트라우마 관련된 공동 노력을 해야 할 때다라는 말씀을 해주신 것 같습니다. 그럼 마지막 코멘테이터 기다리고 계신데요. 예, 일본의 히토츠바시 대학교의 가토 케이키 선생님, 마지막 코멘테이터로 코멘트 부탁드리겠네요. 오늘 여기 현장에 나와 계셔서요.
네.
잘 부탁드립니다.
안녕하십니까. 네, 가토라고 합니다. 오늘은 이런 중요한 심포지움에 초대해 주셔서 감사합니다. 이러한 발개국이나 전년들이 같이 여성 인권과 평화에 대해서 토론할 수 있다는 그런 심포지움을 지금 일본 상황에서는 개최하기가 너무 어렵다고 생각합니다. 역사 수존주의, 역사 부존론이 너무 힘이 강해서 그리고 여성 인권에 대한 인식이 아주 약하기 때문입니다. 이러한 자리를 만들고 있는 한국 시민분들, 그리고 연구자분들, 전념분들, 그리고 아시아 여러 나라 분들의 노력에 감사하고 싶습니다. 네. 저는 크마노 선생님의 지도 자라서 좀 코멘트하기가 좀 어려울 수도 있는 부분이 있는데요. 근데 금화노 선생님은 현재 일본 사회에서 일본군 위안부 문제 관한 연구 그리고 일본군 위안부 문제 해결 운동에 참여하고 있는 젊은 세대의 대표적인 인물이라고 할 수 있습니다. 네, 금화노 선생님의 활동 포인트 몇 가지 말씀드리도록 하겠습니다. 네, 첫 번째는 연구와 운동을 가교 연결하는 방식으로 활동하고 있다는 것입니다. 예를 들면 아까 소개해준 모야모야 책 학생들이 출판한 책이나 그리고 Fight for Justice의 실존은 대표적인 예라고 할 수 있습니다. 현재 모야모야 책은 소편을 준비하고 있고 11월 달에 간행될 예정입니다. 또 발전이 기대됩니다. 또 하나는 두 번째는 현대 가제와 일본군 위안부 문제를 접속해서 생각하고 있는 것이겠죠. 현대 손밀매에 반대하는 입장에서 다양한 운동이나 연구에 참여하고 있는 것이 특히 중요하다고 생각합니다. 일본이 역사적으로 그리고 현재도 여성을 억압해온 사회라고 할 수 있고요. 그것을 극복하기 위해 여러 가지 노력을 하고 있는 것이 아주 중요하다고 생각합니다. 네. 그리고 세 번째는 일본인의 남성으로서 자신의 책임과 맞이하고 있다는 것이죠. 우선 일본 사람으로서는 침략전쟁, 식민지 지배에 대한 가해국 측 사람으로서의 자신의 책임을 마주하고 있다고 할 수 있습니다. 그리고 중요한 것은 남성으로서 마조리티 쪽에서 마조리티 입장으로서 이 문제를 마주하고 있다는 것이죠. 일본 남성으로서 일본군 위안부 문제를 어떻게 마주할지는 쉽게 답이 나올 일이 아니라고 생각합니다. 저도 일본인 남성으로서 맨날 어떻게 하면 되는지 모색하고 있습니다. 금화노 씨하고 많이 얘기하면서 고민하면서 하고 있습니다. 금화노 선생님은 그러한 과제에 임하고 있는 것이 중요하다고 생각합니다. 세 번째 문제와 관련해서 일본군 위안부 문제 해결에 힘쓰는 일본인 남성이 많지 않다는 것이 문제라고 생각합니다. 제가 지도하고 있는 학생 중에서 지금은 일본 사람 같은 경우는 대부분이 여성 학생입니다. 여성입니다. 네, 일본 남성이야말로 위식을 바꿔야 하는데요. 근데 그런 것이 지금 일본 사회에서는 좀 쉽지 않은 일이라고 보입니다. 앞으로 과제로서는 일본 사람들이 여성은 물론이고 특히 남성이야말로 이 위안부 문제에 대해서 제대로 생각해서 뭔가 실천을 해 나가야 할 것 같다고 생각합니다. 이것은 민족 차별 그리고 손차별 둘 다 극복해야 하니까요. 좀 어려운 일이지만 그래도 금화노 선생님의 실존에 기대하고 싶습니다. 네. 그리고 송혜리 선생님께서 남의 소녀산에 대해서 제대로 발표해 주셨습니다. 금화노 씨도 강조했지만 프리프리 운동이 중요하잖아요. 그런 거의 중요성을 다시 지적해 주신 것 같아요. 근데 사실은 일본 지금 상황에서는 역사 부정주의나 여성인권을 부정하는 움직임이 많이 있기 때문에 일본 사회에서 소녀산을 만드는 게 너무 어려운 상황입니다. 그래도 앞으로는 언젠가는 곧 일본에서도 소녀산을 만들어야 한다고 생각합니다. 네, 그래서 일본 지역 사회에서도 이런 위안부 문제에 대해서 실존하는 운동을 또 만들어야 하고 싶고 오늘 발표해 주신 송혜리 선생님께 발표해 주신 내용은 많이 도움이 될 내용이라고 생각했습니다. 그리고 마지막으로 중국 선생님 발표에서는 드라마에 대해서 얘기해 주셨는데 아까도 있었지만 난징 학살에 관여한 일본군 병사들이 일본에 와서 가정에서 번역을 했다는 얘기가 저도 많이 인상 깊었습니다. 근데 이것은 바로 남성주의라고 남성 중심주의라고 할 수 있겠죠. 본격적으로 공격적으로 본격적이고 그리고 공격적인 남성 중심주의라고 할 수 있을 것 같은데요. 이런 것은 사실은 지금 일본 사회에서 남성들이 많이 내면화하고 있는 그런 남성주의라고 생각할 수 있습니다. 네, 그런 것을 극복하는 것도 아주 중요하다고 저는 생각했습니다. 아마 드라마를 치유하는 그런 그 실전도 그런 것에 좀 접속할 수 있는 거라고 그렇게 느꼈습니다. 네, 감사합니다. 네.
네, 카토 선생님께서 여러 코멘트를 해주셨는데요. 현대 과제를 일본군 위안부 문제와 어떻게 접속시킬 것인가에 대해서 그 일본이라는 일본 사회가 여성을 억압해온 뭐라고 할까요? 그런 사회 인식적인 차원, 역사적인 차원에서 알아차리는 것의 중요함 같은 것을 말씀해 주셨습니다. 아마 지금 이 논의에 대해서는 되게 논쟁적이기도 할 것 같은데요. 일단 여기서 기본적으로 여러분의 발표와 코멘트를 정리를 하면서 발표자나 토론자 여러분들 사이에서 다시 말씀을 해 주실 분들이 계시면 좋을 것 같거든요. 일단 발표자 선생님들께서 한마디씩 그 코멘트 해주신 거에 대해서 한마디씩 해주셨으면 좋겠어요. 반응을. 그 다음에 지금 청중 여러분들께서 질문이 있으시다면 몇 개만 받아보도록 하겠습니다. 네, 그러면 첫 발표자이신 송혜리 선생님께서 코멘트에 대한 반응을 해주시면 좋을 것 같습니다.
네, 전반적으로 일단 좋은 코멘트를 해주신 김명희 교수님께 감사를 드리고, 이제 좋은 발표를 해주신 다른 발표자 선생님들과 토론자 선생님들께도 많이 배웠다는 말씀을 먼저 드리고 싶습니다. 그리고 제가 놓쳤던 부분 중에 하나라고 생각이 되는 게 지역이 이제 연대의 모태가 되는, 또한 풀뿌리 운동의 모태가 되는 곳이다라는 것을 지역에 집중하면서도 다소 놓친 측면이 있었던 것 같은데, 그러한 지점들을 여타 발표들에서 짚어주셔서 또 코멘트에서도 짚어주셔서 대단히 감사했었고요. 또 참여자들, 이제 일본군 위안부 운동에 참여하는 지역의 참여자들이 다소 단순하게 표현되었다라는 것에는 이제 시간이 부족했다라는 말씀을 조금 드리면서 혹 나중에 이제 페이퍼로 쓸 기회가 있다면 조금 더 풍부하게 쓰고 싶은데, 이제 중국에서 발표해 주신 선생님의 발표가 또 그리고 일본에서 발표해 주신 선생님의 발표가 나중에 좀 더 문제의식을 발전시키는데 도움이 되지 않을까 싶습니다. 감사합니다.
네, 고맙습니다. 다음은 데이팅 루 선생님께서 코멘트에 대한 반응을 해주시면 감사하겠습니다.
First of all, thank you very much for every one of you. Basically, I think because of the unhealed or unaddressed historical trauma, that we are today here talking about this kind of issues that is related to every one of us that is presenting here, and I'm very thankful for the opportunities as well. And I think my reflection would be, I hope to deep our relationships here and to work together in the near future to overcome this historical trauma. Thank you very much.
네, 고맙습니다. 마지막으로 그 발표자 중에서 구마노 코에이 선생님께서 코멘트에 대한 의견을 주시면 좋겠습니다.
First of all, thank you for giving me a good comment. My teacher, professor, gave me a kind of compliment, but I think, as he said, there are not many men thinking about this issue and also kind of doing the movement. about this issue, but I think it should not be. It's of course it's not good, and my case should not be special. So I also hope that a lot of more men, not only me, have to join the movement for the solution of the Japanese music for women issue, and study the history. And as Professor Kato mentioned before, the racism or like colonialism is always kind of connected to the patriarchy as well. So I hope the Japanese society should overcome this the gender issue as well, but at the same time the racism and the colonialism. Okay, thank you so much.
네, 여러분 감사합니다. 자, 그러면 오래 기다리셨는데요. 예, 청중 여러분들이 많이 지치신 것 같아요. 그래서 끝날 시간이 얼마 남지 않았지만 청중 여러분께서 오늘의 발표와 토론을 들으시고 이 얘기는 꼭 해보고 싶다. 이 질문은 꼭 드려보고 싶다 하는 게 있으실까요? 네.
Brilliant presentation, Komano. But I have to ask two questions. Number one, so what happened to the Japanese left? And then number two, man to man. I'm just curious. I really want to know the answer. How come the land of Shinto is also the land of the ecchi, the land of the hentai, and the land of the bokake? Of course, in asking these questions, we're not exempting Christianity from the same questions. But brilliant presentation. Thank you.
혹시
네.
구만호 선생님 그 두 번째 질문, 첫 번째는 일본 좌파의 현황이라고 질문 주셨지만 두 번째 질문에 대해서 잘 파악을 하고 계실지 모르겠어요. 저도 잘 들리지 않아서 두 번째 질문에 대해서 잘 파악이 되셨을까요? 구만호 선생님?
사실 저 들리지 않았어요. 다시 한번 뭔가 설명해 주셨으면 해요.
Okay, number one, what happened to the Japanese left?
How about
Number
the
two,
second? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about this. I'm really perplexed. How come the land of Shinto is also the land of the hentai?
Oh, okay. I got that. Okay. Can I answer the questions?
네, 부탁드립니다.
Right. So about the first of the question, you mentioned about what happened to the left of the Japanese. I guess you mentioned about the Japanese man, because you said the left. I'm also curious about like what happened to the left of the man, but well, I guess as I said before, the Japanese society has the deep-rooted sexism culture, and I explained the Japanese school education about the Japanese the comfort women issue, about the fact that we don't have almost no school education about this issue, but at the same time we have almost no education about gender issue. So through school days, a lot of men cannot learn the gender issue or gender discrimination issue in their school. So that's why they don't have any chance to learn about it. And of course, they have to kind of more learn to those issues proactively by themselves. But the fact is they don't have the kind of chance. So maybe that's kind of related to the first question. And the second one, you asked the reason why how the Japanese society kind of formed the kind of land of hentai. And hentai is always, yeah, of course, the sexism culture from my point of view. It's really, really kind of big question. So I don't know how to answer this question precisely, but if you look at the history, the Japanese society has always the sex trafficking issue, especially like since 50,000 or 16,000. Japan has the sex trafficking kind of station in the cities, And in the modern days, the sex trafficking system, the licensed prostitution system keeps going, and now we don't have the kind of the licensed prostitution system, but there are so many like sex trafficking issue in Japan, as I mentioned in my presentation, and of course the Japanese military comfort women system is always kind of connected this culture. So, and the reason why our society still have this kind of sexism culture is just that we don't have the Japanese government didn't pursue the responsibility of the Japanese military comfort women issue. So that's why the Japanese society doesn't have the chance to face this issue, or like a gender issue, racism issue, colonialism issue. So that's why this kind of bad vicious cycles is always keep going on till this today. So yeah, I guess this is my question, my answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other? Oh.
Thank you. I was able to interview Hosokawa Morihiro and Murayama when they were prime minister. So there was a time I was hopeful that either of the two gentlemen will be the chosen one who will bring balance to the force as far as Japanese society was concerned. So maybe there should be more drinking sessions among Japanese men and Filipino men.
Thank you, Professor Bernard. Do we have any questions from the floor? While we are waiting for you, I just wanted to read some of the comments we got from the chat box. From Professor Data, just a quick thank you to all of the panelists for 3 brilliant presentations. From Mr. Swati, thanks for the panelists for the inspiring presentations. Any questions? Sure, perfect.
Just a quick question. My question is, to what extent can you really use the excuse of no education about gender inequality, about no education about the comfort women issues, to really like justify a lack of action or a lack of apology or a lack of, doing something and pursuing justice and therefore reconciliation? Because you really double down on how there's no education about it, about how it's covered up in the history textbooks, but you're talking about it, and clearly there are people who are aware of the issue and trying to do something about it. So to what extent can you really say, oh, there's no education, so that's why the society is like this, that's why the problem has not been solved? Yeah, that's my question.
Thank you.
네, 이 질문은 또 어떤 선생님께서 답변해 주시면 좋을지 모르겠는데요. 구만호 선생님께서 너무 답변을 많이 해주셔가지고, 예, 어떤 분들이 나서서 해주시면 좋을까 싶어요. 꼭 이 문제가 사실, 일본인으로서 이 자리에 나와서 일본을 대변하는 자리가 아니기 때문에 곤란하실 것 같다는 생각도 들고, 그러나 놓칠 수 없는 문제이기도 하기 때문에 다른 발표자분들이나 토론자 선생님들이 말씀해 주셔도 좋을 것 같거든요. 사실 한국 교과서도 문제 많지 않나요? 예, 그래서 꼭 일본만의 문제는 아니라는 생각이 들기도 합니다만, 어떤 선생님께서 나서 주실까요? 토론자 선생님들 포함해서. 예, 열기가 갑자기 뜨겁습니다. 네, 같은 선생님 말씀해 주시겠어요? 감사합니다.
안녕하세요. 말씀을 해주셨듯이 일본에서는 지금 시민사회의 힘이 점점 약해지고 있고, 그런 것을 변명을 하면 안 된다는 것은 바로 진짜 적당한 말씀이라고 생각합니다. 근데 우리는 이런 사회를 어떻게 바꿔야 하는지를 생각해서 아마 크마노 선생님께서는 책을 만들었다는 얘기를 발표하거나, 파이트 포 저스티스라는 인터넷으로 시민사회에서 국가가 안 했으니까 우리가 해야 한다는 그런 의식으로 운동을 하고 있다는 것을 발표한 것 같습니다. 근데 일단 그런 운동을 해야 되는 배경을 설명해야 하니까 일본 상황을 소개한 건데, 사실은 우리가 열심히 해야 한다는 그런 얘기를 하고 있는 것 같습니다. 근데 그래도 우리는 일단 힘이 많이 부족하고 있으니까 그런 것을 변명을 하면 안 된다는 것은 진짜 중요한 지적이라고 생각합니다. 갑니다. 네, 감사합니다.
네, 감사합니다. 답변이 되셨을까요? 예, 뭐라 할까요? 가해 당사국뿐만이 아니라 이럴 때야말로 초국적인 연대가 필요한 것 아닐까라는 생각, 초국적인 남성들의 연대, 예, 그런 게 필요하지 않을까라는 생각이 들고요. 때마침 지금 아까 연결이 되지 않았던 중국의 바오슝 선생님께서 연결이 되셨어요. 그래서 저희가 잠깐 인사라도 나누고 싶은데요. 선생님, 예.
Professor Bai, did you hear us? Can you hear us? Yeah, please say hello to everyone. I think you are on mute. Otherwise, your computer is not working. 안 된다고요?
네,
네.
네, 너무 안타깝죠. 저희가
그냥-
손을 흔들어서 이렇게, 예. 네, say hello 하는 거예요.
네.
예, 감사합니다.
죄송합니다.
항상 이렇게 이야기를 나누는 장은 시간이 부족합니다. 아쉽지만, 아쉬움이 있어야 저희가 또 만나기 때문에, 예, 마지막으로, 말씀을 드리고, 예, 정리를 해보도록 하겠습니다. 저는 오늘 나온 이야기들 중에서 남성들이 이 문제를, 일본군 위안부 문제를 비롯한 젠더 기반 폭력의 문제를 왜 자신의 문제로 떠안지 못하고 있는가, 비단 일본만의 문제가 아니라고 생각을 하고요. 그리고 일본군 위안부 문제라는 것은 기본적으로 군대의 문제지 않습니까? 예, 병사들의 문제이기도 합니다. 그래서 남자들이 강요받았던 그 남성성이라는 것에 대해서도 다시 생각해 볼 수 있는 그런 되게 적절한 계기가 아닐까. 예, 그래서 그런 젠더 지옥 같은, 군대야말로 젠더 지옥이 아니겠어요? 예, 남성이라는 이유로 징집되고, 위안소 마찬가지죠. 위안소라는 시스템도 여성이라는 이유로. 그러나 지금은 남성이라는 이유로 전시 강간을 당하는 더 본보기로 이런 분들도 계시잖아요. 그래서 저희가 어떤 면에서는 이런 젠더 지옥을 벗어나기 위해서 어떤 고민들을 더 나눠야 하는지, 예, 그런 생각을 좀 해보게 되었어요. 그래서 오늘은 취지문에도 언급이 되어 있지만 일본군 위안부 문제가 여전히 문제로 남아있는 이유가 무엇인가? 인종, 계급, 성차별적인 구조가 그리고 거기서 오는 부정의들이 여전히 불처별, 불해결인 상태로 잔존하고 있다라는 그 문제의식이 취지문에 보였어요. 그래서 오늘의 워크숍이 일본군 위안부 문제를 아시아의 각 지역과 또 글로벌한 세계적인 전시성폭력의 역사, 여성, 안보, 또 젠더 기반 폭력, 평화, 정의 이런 커다란 문제의식들과 연계해서 확장적으로 우리가 고민을 나누고 또 성찰할 수 있는 계기가 되었으면 좋겠다라는 바람이 있습니다. 첫 번째 워크숍은 이렇게 마치겠습니다. 여러분 감사합니다.